Hello fellow Clashers, I'm Kairos Time and it is time to clash. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Flying Machine Challenge and I'm going to completely break that down, talk about everything you need to know about the Flying Machine and the challenge as well, so that you can get that Flying Machine, hopefully in your first try. Hope you enjoy! Thank you so much for watching today's video. Today we're going to be doing a stat breakdown of the Flying Machine. We're going to compare it to other cards that are already in the game and that you're familiar with so that you know how to play it and how to play against it. We're also going to talk about some cards that counter the Flying Machine as well as cards that the Flying Machine counters. We're also going to cover cards that synergize really well with the Flying Machine, that pair up well with it, as well as some general challenge tips for this specific challenge and how to draft for this challenge as well. I hope that I can make this video really good for you guys. There's a lot of great content in here. I recorded it once before and I got up to about 35 minutes and I think that's a little too long, so hopefully we can shorten that up for you guys. I may be going pretty quickly for you. So one thing I wanted to mention is that we're going to be comparing the Flying Machine at tournament standards to other cards at tournament standards, so you don't have to worry about that. The first thing we want to talk about is that it is a 4 elixir card. Because of that is considered a medium investment card, and medium investment cards tend to fit into a lot of different archetypes, unless they're like a specific win condition that fit into a specific archetype. But the Flying Machine I definitely think has a good spot in control decks. I think that it's going to have a good spot in beatdown decks, and I even think that it may have some spots, or have some of a spot in siege decks as well. Now, important times to play the Flying Machine, because of its characteristics, is mostly on defense and then turning that into some type of a counter push, or maybe you have a push building up, or you defend with a different card and then you use the Flying Machine in addition on a counter push. That's a good option as well. I think that the Flying Machine is going to work as a good support card for beatdown pushes, possibly even some control pushes. And then one thing that's really unique to the Flying Machine is that it is a threat to the tower, a flying threat to the tower. Its move speed and range, and the fact that it flies and its damage per second really means that you have to deal with this thing quickly. And it's one of the first cards in the game to be a flying threat, of its caliber at least. Obviously there's like the balloon and things like that, but the balloon doesn't move as quickly. Hopefully that makes sense. The one characteristic I really wanted to talk about is the range of the card. This is the first flying troop that really has a good size range. It's by far the longest of any flying card. It has a max range of 6 tiles, which is really long. And is only really beaten by the Princess and the Dart Goblin. But a Baby Dragon has the 3.5, and the longest air troop currently, as I'm recording this before the Flying Machine is released into the game, is the Inferno Dragon of 4 tiles. Take the range of the Inferno Dragon, add 2 to that, and that is the range of the Flying Machine. Really great long range. It's been compared to a Dart Goblin in the past, but really the real range that it comes down to is a Musketeer. Now think of it having the range of a Musketeer, but being a little bit faster. The Musketeer has a medium move speed, the Dart Goblin has a very fast move speed, and the Flying Machine has a fast move speed. It's quick for its cost, and because it's quick for its cost, the best use is going to require some planning on your part when you're going to place that card down. It's not something you want to play at all times. It's not very good at allowing for you to build up a push behind it, or for it to build up with a big push, but it does offer some value as support for other big pushes. But it is going to require some planning to play it the best. Now, it's quick for its range. Because it's quick for its range, that means that it's going to be a very fast support card and is going to do a really good job at supporting certain types of cards that may be a little bit faster. And it's not limited by the bridge. And this is a really key aspect, because cards like the Musketeer, she's slower, but she also has to walk around, so she can't really support like a Hog Rider against defensive buildings or some situations like that. But the Flying Machine can. The Flying Machine isn't limited by the bridge. You can place it right in the middle and it can go right in there. So its move speed is most similar to the minions and also the Baby Dragon, the exact same move speed at fast. So think about how quickly the minions move. And just imagine that, a flying Musketeer that moves as fast as minions. Like that's a threat. You have to deal with that. You can't ignore that. Now, its damage per second is 142 damage, so most similar to a baby dragon. A baby dragon, just obviously a baby dragon does splash. This does single target damage, but it compare that to how much a baby dragon does with one shot and what you need to deal with there. It also is compared to the executioner, who does 140 damage one way and also 140 damage the other way. So think about all of the cards that does 140 damage to one way, and just imagine that that is what it does. Of course, to single point damage. Then we also do have the Dart Goblin that does 143 damage per second. Now that's not the greatest comparison because Dart Goblin actually does less than that, but has a higher hit speed of 0.65. Now the Flying Machine has 142 damage per second, but it also fires at a rate of 1 shot per second. So that's kind of similar right here. Kind of close to the Dart Goblin over a long period of time. Obviously, you don't want a Dart Goblin locking onto the tower and shooting for a really long time, and that's what's going to happen if you let this Flying Machine lock onto your tower, because it has more hit points than a Dart Goblin. But first, let's talk about this hit speed right here. It has a hit speed of 1 second. That's not 3.5 for the bats. The bats actually have a 1 second hit speed. That 3.5 is for something else, so don't worry about it. Minions as well, so think about how quickly minions hit. Right, you can do a beat to it. That's the Flying Machine. The Dart Goblin does a 0.65 hit speed, and then the Musketeer, very similar at a 1.1 hit speed. There you go. Now, its hit points. There's actually not a card that is very similar to the Flying Machine. When it comes to its hit points, it is similar. It's somewhere between the Bomber that can be taken out by Fireball in one shot, and the Electro Wizard that cannot be taken out by a Fireball in one shot. It's at 5'10", the Electro Wizard, so just imagine how much it takes to take out an Electro Wizard, and think a little bit less than that. A little bit less, which is enough for it to be fireballed in one shot, but it does have a little bit of tankiness to it. Obviously, you can deal with it pretty quickly if you have the right cards, but it does last a while, so you have to worry about that. Other stats you need to worry about as a 1 second spawn rate, as well as it targets ground and air troops at single point damage. And that is all of the stats of the Flying Machine. Hope that was helpful for you. Now let's talk about some of the counters to the Flying Machine. Very first off is basically anything that targets air except for the following cards. We got Spear Goblins. They don't do a good job. We've got the Dart Goblin. It doesn't do a good job. It's a little bit longer range, but the Flying Machine gets pretty close. Takes 2 shots, gets rid of that Dart Goblin, and the Flying Machine has plenty of health left. Princess does not do a good job. Gets taken out in 2 shots and does very little damage to the Flying Machine. Now the Princess is fine if it's protected and it's far enough away that it can outrange it, but then you're still, unless you have something to tank damage, then it's going to be attacking the tower, and that's a lot of damage per second you do not want on your tower. Fire Spirits, they take 2 shots to be taken out by the Flying Machine, so if you place it right at the same spot, the Fire Spirits will all jump onto the Flying Machine, but they will not finish it off. It will survive with just a sliver of health. If the tower is locked onto the Flying Machine, then that's a good counter. But if it's not, if it's distracted by something else, that Flying Machine is going to survive, so you have to worry about that. Then we also have the Ice Wizard. If the Ice Wizard and the Flying Machine are on opposite sides of the river and the towers are not supporting it, the Flying Machine will take out the Ice Wizard. But if the tower is supporting the Ice Wizard and is able to also attack the Flying Machine, then it's a good option, but not typically the best. And the Witch, kind of a similar scenario as the Ice Wizard, where it does well with the tower, but it's one more elixir than the Flying Machine, so it's not really the greatest counter to it. But basically anything else, like the Electro Wizard or the Musketeer, the Tesla Tower, the Inferno Tower, other cards that target air cards, even archers do a pretty decent job. They kind of fit into the similar scenario of the Ice Wizard and the Witch, where they do good with the tower supporting it and not so well without it, but you kind of get the right idea right there. Most cards that attack air do a decent job against it. Best counters to the Flying Machine include the Fireball. I've mentioned the Fireball gets rid of it in one shot. Then we also have the Bats and the Minions. Now the Bats and the Minions do great by themselves at taking care of the Flying Machine. The Minions take 2 shots from the Flying Machine to survive, so there's plenty of time for the Minions to be able to take it out. And the Bats, they get taken care of in one shot, but there's so many of them and they do have such a good DPS that they'll be able to get rid of it. But if either of these are supported with a Zap, then the Flying Machine is going to overrun them. So if you have Flying Machine plus Zap, will get rid of those the Minions, and Zap will obviously also take care of the Bats. So that's a really good option right there. The Mega Minion does a great job at taking care of the Flying Machine. It takes 2 swipes, and that second swipe will finish off that Flying Machine, and the Mega Minion will have plenty of health left. Not enough that the tower will not be able to finish it off. The tower, once the Mega Minion crosses the river, the tower will finish it off, but you've at least made a 1 elixir positive trade. Other options include the small cheap mini tanks like the Ice Golem and the Knight will both survive as long as you can get that Flying Machine to lock onto them so that the tower can finish them off. And then the Electro Wizard, Musketeer, and the Executioner will all survive with some health, and so afterwards. So they are decent options against the Flying Machine as well, if you can use them on a counter push especially. The Flying Machine is good against a lot of different cards. It's good against ground troops that target ground, that don't target air stuff, obviously. So bowlers, barbarians, whatever, you know, things that aren't immediate threats. It won't take care of a bandit fast enough for the bandit to not lock on the tower. The bandit will lock onto the tower. Does a pretty great job against the battle ram. Some really, you know, obviously these are obvious choices, but interestingly it does good against the tombstone and the cannon. If, like I said, let's say you have it with a Hog Rider, the Hog Rider comes forward, your opponent plays down a tombstone, you know that they're going to have a tombstone because you paid attention to the cycle, you place down a Flying Machine in the middle, and it will go and lock onto that and possibly even be able to get rid of it. It'll get rid of a tombstone before the Hog Rider even gets to it, but then a cannon, the Hog Rider will just come and smack it once and then go to the tower and be able to do some damage there. It's a great defense against Mega Minion and also the Minions as long as it's from a distance. And then also, I think it's a good option against the Lava Hound and the Graveyard. Now, the Graveyard spawns skeletons every half a second, and the Flying Machine gets rid of skeletons every second. So the Graveyard will still spawn some if the tower is distracting it, is being distracted by something else. But with the tower, it's a great option against the Graveyard. Some good cards that synergize well with the Flying Machine. Let's start off with some win conditions. There are a lot, like I said, it's a versatile card that can fit into a lot of different deck archetypes, so we're going to include a lot of those here. First thing I wanted to mention are fast ground threats. Now, the Flying Machine is a fast air threat, and as such, if you pair it with a fast ground threat, typically people have 1 or 2 card in their deck that can quickly deal with threats, ground or flying. Not both though, or they only have 1 in their hand. And so if you place both fast threats, then they're going to be able to deal with 1 of them, and it may be difficult for them to deal with another one, like the Flying Machine. Then we also have the Miner that can act as a quick tank against the obviously these are controlled cards, and so you're going to have a pretty good elixir advantage to be able to do this type of a push. But if you do so, then you should be able to get rid of an enemy tower. Let's say your opponent plays down a Golem. They're not going to be able to stop both a Miner and a Flying Machine. They're not going to have the elixir too, so great way to punish your opponent. 3 Musketeers. The Flying Machine is a fireball bait card, and so it could technically work well with a 3 Musketeer deck. Obviously you'd have to build a solid deck around it. And then I think the obvious choice is to include the Flying Machine in some type of like a Lava Hound or a Balloon or a Lava Loon deck. And then also big heavy tanks. I think the Flying Machine is going to work as a pretty great support card with those heavy tanks. Other cards that synergize with it are anti-air cards. What I mean by that is we have the Zap that does a good job at getting rid of air cards. It's an anti-air card, like it's a card that can get rid of cards like the Minions and the Bats that are anti-air. That's too confusing. You get what I'm saying. Hashtag anti-air. But does a good job with that. But then also a lot of other ground cards like the Musketeers, Wizards, or the Electro Wizard. The Fireball does a good job. In addition to the Flying Machine, should do a good job at helping out with that and synergizing with the Flying Machine. Some other possibilities for cards that could synergize well with it. We do have the Ice Spirit. Now the Ice Spirit will help kind of as a preemptive zap. kind of, to be able to get rid of bats or minions, and then the Flying Machine can finish them off. Or I also think that a Flying Machine Balloon cycle deck, I think that does, it's interesting. I haven't, obviously I haven't tried it yet, but the card's not out. But I'm gonna try that, and I'm excited to try that out. Then there's cheap tanks, so you place down a cheap tank, and then it tanks for the Flying Machine. That's, I mean, if you have the Ice Golem and the Flying Machine, that's 6 elixir, and if you can get that, if you can catch them in a rough spot where they can't defend against that Flying Machine, that's really going to put them into a tough spot. I think that could be a good situation to maybe think about, and I think that it does have some possibilities for Expo or Mortar for some siege capabilities. Now let's go ahead and talk about some draft tips. First thing you want to make sure you're doing is drafting to counter to the Flying Machine. Whether you have the Flying Machine, if you take counters to the Flying Machine, then your opponent is less likely to be able to counter you. But if your opponent has the Flying Machine and you take counters to the Flying Machine, you're going to be able to deal with it. So you want to draft cards that counter the Flying Machine, which I've talked about in this video, so you know all of the cards that counter the Flying Machine, so that should work out. You're also going to want to make sure you go for win conditions. If you can starve your opponent from win conditions so that they just can't even take out your tower, then you're set. And here are some really good strategies that I use when it comes to drafting cards. It's not like I stick to one of these and just try and focus on that one every single time I draft. Usually what happens is I'll pick one card, and then I'll see my second option, or my second draft options, and decide which kind of style I'm going to try and follow. So first of all, focus on one utility. So take a bunch of cards that are flying, or a bunch of cards that all die to Fireball, or a bunch of cards that are loggable, or a bunch of, you kind of get what I'm saying. And the reason why I do that is so that if my opponent has the log, they'll be able to log one of them, but they won't be able to log all of my cards, and I'll be able to take a tower. If they have Fireball, you kind of get what I'm saying. You also want to pick cards that require specific responses, like Sparky is easily dealt with in most decks, but for challenges you struggle to deal with it because you might not have Zap, you might not have Electro Wizard, you might not have Lightning, and so Sparky all of a sudden is a really big threat. You get what I'm saying. Overloading your opponent's elixir is a great way to draft. Just give your opponent all the really elixir heavy cards. This doesn't work in 2 times elixir draft mode, but for one time, for regular drafting, it's a great option. It really is. Also, taking counters to your cards so that your opponent doesn't have counters to your cards, and also taking counters to the cards that you're giving your opponent is a great option. That kind of makes common sense, but that's a really important factor to pay attention to. And as well, just picking the higher tier card for tournament challenges. I've done plenty of tier lists for cards, and typically, obviously this is a different meta than a regular tournament, but typically just picking the card that's just better overall is a good option. So hopefully that helps you. Let's go ahead and talk about some challenge tips. First of all, there is one constant, the Flying Machine. Make sure you know how to counter it, make sure you know how to play it, and make sure that you're aware that it's going to be in somebody's hand. If you don't have it, you know one of your opponent's cards even before they played it, and that gives you the advantage. Prepare. This is a one time for free, and after that it costs 100 gems every single time. You want to get at least 8 wins the first time, and you want to at least get 12 wins as well, because that's a lot of great free cards, a lot of good gold, a lot of great cards, a lot of flying machines. So you want to prepare beforehand. You're watching this, and so obviously you're doing your homework, you're going to do well, but I highly recommend watching Clash with Ash. Last challenge he did a really great breakdown on the Meta Knight, or the Mega Knight. Ooh. And then also Orange Juice. Obviously, if you're watching me, you're probably already watching Orange Juice, so I don't talk about that. Learn from others, watch your clan mates make mistakes, watch them draft, watch their replays where they win. There's gonna be lots of YouTubers, Twitch streamers, etc. Make sure you learn from them and be able to take advantage of that. The best time to play, honestly, not within the first 5 to 10 hours, or 5 to 8 hours. Usually that's when all of the pros are like, I gotta get this fast and want to win in tournaments and things like that. Typically it is the first day after those first 8 hours though, and then the last day as well. And draft is not all luck. If you think that draft is all luck, you're gonna lose, and it's not. It is very much skill. It's a huge part of playing. Drafting is a huge skill, and so you need to be patient. If you aren't playing well, either you just aren't very good at, well, this is going to sound wrong, but if you're not playing well, either you need to learn how to draft better, you need to learn how to play specific cards better, or you just need to learn the meta a little bit better. And one of those three are usually how it works out. And if you do have any questions on this, please drop a comment in the section below. I recently started grad school, and so I don't have as much time to respond to comments as I used to, but I do read every single one of my comments, and I do like to pick out the comments that really stick out to me. So if you do want help, just please let me know. Lastly, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and please give it a like and a thumbs up if you did like it. If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe. For now, this is Kairos time ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.